Welcome. It is May 9th of 2026, and we are in the Festival of Revolutions. And this is a session on the democracy stage about transforming governance through integration. I am Ronnie, and I'm here with Melissa from Integration Station. And this workshop is usually scheduled for 2 hours. And depending on which version of the schedule you were looking at, we are scheduled for an hour and a half or an hour and 15 minutes. And so I'm going to call this enough introductions and jump right in so that we have time for some hands-on demo and practice. If you do want to learn more about us, you're very welcome to go to our website at decisionsforall.org and get a sense of what we do, which is, I think also this session is very much going to give you a sense of what we do, which is about supporting people in moving towards a more collaborative future by looking at integrative ways of making decisions and organizing government. Is there anything anyone needs before we get started? All right, I'm going to share my screen so we have some visuals to help us out. So this is the topic. And yes, basically our main purpose today is to get a bit of a taste of integrative decisions. Maybe if you're already familiar, deepen a little bit of your understanding and the skills of what's involved and see if you might be inspired to bring more of it into your life or the organizations or movements that you're a part of, mostly through learning by doing. And I already invited everyone to participate, so we will see who is up for that in a moment. Often when we start thinking about alternative for democracy or how we're going to govern ourselves, either in a small group or a big organization or even around the world, the first thing that tends to come to mind is structure. So we think about, are we going to organize ourselves through hierarchy or circles like sociocracy, horizontalism? So we have a lot of these different structures of governance that have emerged over the history of humanity. And what we are actually going to be focusing on in this session is less the question of structure, or more the question of the principles. How is it that we are making decisions? And of course, the structures influence how we will be orienting to decisions, but it's also quite possible to make decisions in different ways, regardless of the structure. And within the same structure, to also be using different orientations to how we make decisions. So the key question, and you might be thinking about citizen assemblies and other structures. And again, if we have a citizen assembly, that's a structure, but a citizen assembly could make a decision, it usually does not, but it could make a decision through voting and majority wins. It could make decisions through consensus, it could make decisions through consent, and it could make decisions through integration. And the main question I like to ask is, what do we do when we disagree? And that, more than the structure, tells me how are we orienting to making decisions? And are we trying to make decisions that would be caring for everyone and caring for all of life on this planet? Or are we more oriented to making decisions that are caring for the needs of some at the expense of others? So I want to pause here for a moment for people to take this in. And then move us on to think about, okay, what do we do when we disagree? So here are some ways to resolve disagreements. And sadly, in our mainstream cultures these days, the most common ways are ways that use force, or what some people call domination. And force can be very obvious, for example, violence, but it can also be more subtle. Different forms of authority. It could be because somebody is someone's boss. It could be because we have a parent and a child. There are many forms of structural power in our cultures at the moment. And there's an even more subtle use of force, which is sometimes by some people really seen as a very supportive form of democracy, and that's majority wins voting. And the force we use here is the force of the majority to force their opinion on the minority. And often it leads to a lot of the political dynamics that we're seeing in countries that have, which are many at the moment, in countries that have this form of voting, but especially in countries where you start getting into this polarized, basically two options, left or right, that nobody really likes. So when we have this habit of using force, or when we are able to use force, uh, we might use one of these methods. But if we don't want to use force, or if we don't have the power to be able to use force, and we're still seeing ourselves as trying to get other people to agree to what we want, but we don't actually want to force it on them, or we don't want them to not get what they want, we then often find ourselves moving to this part, which is compromise, or what some people call negotiation. And that is the idea that if one person wants one thing and the other one wants a different thing, we are going to somehow meet in the middle. I'm going to give up something, you're going to give up something, but we're all going to get something. And that is better than nobody getting anything that they want. And the problem with compromise is that first, people are giving up on things that really matter to them. So the solutions we find are not as helpful. And the whole orientation is quite competitive. It's this idea of like, hey, how can I get more? And yes, I also want you to get something, but we're very much still entrenched inside. And the shift that we'll be playing with today is moving to something entirely different, which is integration. It's moving out of this idea that we need to choose between two things and we have either or, and coming out of creativity by changing the conversation to look at underlying needs and what are the things that are important to everyone that's involved. And this orientation to making decisions builds up a lot of trust, because we are a we. We are not two sides trying to find something that we're both somewhat okay with, but instead we are all part of a single group or a community looking for something that would care for enough needs where everyone is able to fully support the decision. And this concept was introduced more than 100 years ago by Mary Parker Follett, and then later put into a lot of specific practices, for example, in conversion facilitation from Mickey Cushton, bringing also some of the principles from nonviolent communication from Marshall Rosenberg. So that's some of the roots of these practices. And today we'll be looking at what does that actually look like when we try to use it. I'm going to stop here for a moment and see if anyone has any clarifying questions. Also, welcome to people who joined us after we started. Everything super clear? All right. So, how do we actually do this? Let's go back to looking at our visuals. So the main thing that we're doing here is changing the layer of conversation. One of the things that most of us learned in our very competition, compromise, majority wins oriented cultures is that the thing to do is debate opinions. So when we come into conversation, even when we are intending to collaborate, more often than not, we are sharing opinions. In this example, if we're trying to make a decision, one opinion might be our leader should decide. And the problem when we are at this layer is, let's say someone else thinks, no, our leader shouldn't decide. We should all decide together, or someone else should decide. We are then getting into an argument. And then we are trying to convince each other which person is right, or who's going to just give up, or is there some way that we can meet in the middle? And to come out of this conversation, we want to go underneath that to understand, why is it that our leader should decide or should not decide? And at this layer, we are getting into considerations. If we go all the way, if we keep asking why, all the way at the bottom of that, we're going to find universal human needs. And this is from, if you're familiar with nonviolent communication for Marshall Rosenberg, This is something that all of us share in common. So all people want food, shelter, connection, contribution, appreciation. We all have things that are universally recognizable. And when we get to this layer, we're almost always able to connect with each other and understand each other and find common ground. The problem with trying to make decisions from this layer is that it's really, really vague. So if I want to make a decision and I go for a one word universal need like clarity or understanding, when we make a proposal about what to do, I don't know exactly what proposal I would need to make that would care for clarity and understanding. Clarity about what? And so what we want to do is find this middle layer of considerations, which is needs in context. It's not an opinion or solution or strategy. It's not what we're going to do. It's a why, but it's a why in context. And at this place, we can support really efficient and connecting dialogue about what to do. So if somebody thinks our leaders should decide, what might be their consideration is that they want a clear and simple plan. And they believe that our leader deciding would support this clear and simple plan. But if we could come up with a clear and simple plan without our leader deciding, they would be okay with that. And the person who doesn't want our leader to decide, who maybe wants the group to decide, they also have a reason. They also have a consideration or underlying needs. So it could be, for example, that what's important to them is that everyone's perspective is taken into account. And if we found a way for everyone's perspective to be taken into account, they wouldn't mind if our leader does decide. So you can see that the disagreement wasn't actually a strong disagreement. It was just at a layer where it was very difficult to see the common ground. And when we move down into this layer of understanding why or what's important to people, what matters to us, what are the principles, what are we trying to care for, from here we will be able to find integrative solutions. And this is the thing that we are about to practice. So we will be practicing how do we work on a decision coming out of this layer of people sharing opinions, finding the underlying needs or considerations, not as one words, which is a little too vague, but as full sentences. And then from that place, making a decision that everyone will be able to fully support. I'm going to pause one more time to see if there are any questions or comments. And if you're like, no, I'm good, we can try this out, then we can try this out. All right, I love that we get to jump right into practice. Then we'll discover if we have questions and come back. So I will share with us, I will do a demo first, but I will share with us what it is that we are going to practice. So first I want to say that we work with real plays, and you might be wondering what is a real play. A real play is just like a role play, except you're playing yourself. So we are in an imaginary situation in which you are you. And the reason we do that, and in general, I recommend if you are trying to build these skills and practice, which I also recommend, that you use real plays instead of role plays. Because first, you get a more realistic experience. And second, it's very, very difficult to know if you're actually finding integration when you're role playing, because people are in a character. And it's fun to play a character, but we don't necessarily know what it would take for that character to be really okay with something. And when we're playing ourselves, you very easily know, would you actually be okay with this decision or not? And then we can find out if we actually found integration. So we're going to try to choose situations or topics that reproduce common challenges or actual experiences that we have, and something that works well enough so everyone who's participating is able to play themselves, and something that's quick and easy to describe so that we don't need a lot of context. And the steps for this practice will look something like this. One person is going to share their real opinion about whatever decision we're trying to make. And then we're going to use this practice called the guess and check. We're going to try to guess the underlying need or the essence of what the person is sharing. And then find something that is common ground that we are also okay with. And then we do that for every person that is part of the decision. And then we're going to end up with a clear sense of what's important to all of us that we can then use to come up with solutions. And Melissa, if you are willing to put the steps in the chat for us, I think that will be very helpful for people. Thank you. And also, I know this question always arrives at some point. Can we have a copy of the slides? So let's just get people not distracted. And if you can put a link to the slides in there as well. Yes, you can have a copy of the slides. You can have them right now, but I invite you to try not to look at them right now so that we can all stay present together and practice. All right. Is somebody up for doing a demo of this with me before people try this out? Sergey, thank you so much. What would you like to argue about today?
Yeah, now that
And
I've
if you
said
have no
yes.
idea, I can come up with suggestions. I do this all the time.
Yeah, give me a suggestion.
So I was thinking about this. So like I wonder what would be a good real play for a group of people where I really don't know the context of everyone coming in. And what I thought might be interesting is looking at imagining that we are all part of a citizen assembly and that our task is to come up with a decision around how to reduce the usage of cars. And there's a proposal at the moment that we simply uh, remove the option for anyone to own a car. So, not people, not organizations, not businesses, nobody owns a car. There is some supply of community cars that can be used as needed, and you cannot buy a car anymore. And then we can see who might have concerns or alternative proposals, and engage with that. So I'm curious, would you be in favor or against this proposal of uh, not being able to buy cars anymore?
I'd be in favor.
You'd be in favor. Great. Uh, yes,
I would be against.
you pick it. Beautiful. Thank you. So now we have two people. Now, what I'm going to do first is invite the two of you, pretend that I didn't say anything about integration for the last 10 minutes, and just invite the two of you to do what you would usually do, which is if you're in favor and against, I imagine you might want to try to explain or debate the topic or whatever it is that comes naturally to you. Or maybe you just naturally do integration, I don't know. But without support from me, you can start out by just doing something and we'll see how that goes. And then I'll invite you to pause in a little bit and we can see if we might want to adjust something.
Sergey, do you want first why you are in favor of your point?
Yeah. I would have I would need some more details, of course, to understand how it would work. But in general, I support that proposal because it would be a clear way to reduce CO2 in one of the major categories that we need to reduce CO2 in, which is traffic.
Okay. Although I agree on that point, I'm not in favor because I'm afraid that, like it happens with the private companies who own all those cars and they rent them out or do whatever, they usually trying to increase prices on their whim. They're not regulated and they try to infringe on the privacy of their users. In that sense, they can limit my ability to move around and have a freedom of movement. Also, if I do any kind of protest or do anything, they can even permanently cut out my ability to move further than I can do with the ownership of bicycle or legs.
Am I right to assume that am I hearing it right that you assume that those cars that are then shared and not owned are owned by other companies who would then service us to use them?
True, they can be owned by state, then I'm not sure that state will be good option as well. Maybe good option would be if we assumption is that if we kind of have some kind of communal ownership, so in the sense that we have share holding that the entire community who is using those cars has a share ownership, maybe then I could kind of be able to kind of change opinion with the strict rules and freedoms, what would cause me losing the ability to be driven, let's say be like violating some kind of very huge things. But still, like there should be, even if I the crime and I spend my repentance in whatever jail, I should be allowed to at least get to the emergency, to get to there and there. It shouldn't be a limiting right.
Thank you so much for starting our real play for us. So first I want to say there's nothing wrong with trying to make decisions in this way. Sometimes they will lead to integrative outcomes, but it's less likely to happen when you are in a large group and where people have these habits of arguing or trying to convince or getting defensive, and we don't have anything in the space to help us out. So these practices help us bring the conversation to that consideration layer every time it comes out of it. So for all of you here, if you thought you were just observing, surprise, we are all practicing. So the invitation is to think about, if you are not already doing that, while listening to people talk, did you hear any underlying needs or considerations that are likely common ground? I'll give you a few seconds to reflect on that. Is there anyone who wants to share something they heard? Yes.
I'm not sure whether I heard this explicitly, but it's the need to balance the freedom of movement of the individuals with, let's say, the satisfaction of the car makers who've been used to operating in pretty much a free market, and suddenly that market becomes restricted. That's what
Mm-hmm.
that could be.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do with this practice is we're not trying to balance things because, again, we're not going to make trade-offs. We're just listing all of them as things that matter to us. So I also heard freedom of movement as something that matters to us. And that piece around companies, I heard something different in that because for me, this piece around what are companies going to do, that's very much at the top of that pyramid. It's about solutions, strategies, opinions. I'm guessing what's underneath is wanting access to cars to be based on needs and not on commercial interests. Yes, Alexander.
Wouldn't companies like like Alberto said, the car makers try to, in the large echo chambers, try to lobby and try to amplify some of the voices in the sense that they will push for one story against the other because for them it's making profit. So Sergey's actually my stance of having the private car would be supported and lobbied, like I would be paid by some companies just to keep my as much as possible my stance, which is happening now with the fossil fuel companies. So
So that often
so how do
happens
you solve that?
because Mhm. That often happens because we haven't brought all the stakeholders into the conversation. We need to have someone here that represents car companies, and we're also going to get their needs. They're saying that they want to make a lot of money. That is a strategy or an opinion. It is not a need. We need to understand what is their need. And when we get that, it is a need when it is something that all of us are not against in principle. And I imagine some people here are against car companies making a lot of money. So at that level, it is not a piece of common ground. So I would want to get underneath that. I'm curious if there's anyone who feels like they can really connect to, I am the CEO of a car company, who might be willing to bring in that perspective for us. This will be less of a real play, I imagine, for us. Sergey,
Well,
congratulations on your new car company.
well, one thing I could see is that I noted down some sense of autonomy, right? So when I need it, I can act on my own to get that car and
Mhm.
do my thing. this might be a need that car companies actually sort of play into, the fear of the loss of autonomy for me to own a car, right? So they can make a profit.
All true. And in this moment, I want us to actually think about what are their needs.
Hmm.
We're not taking sides. They are a part of we. We, including the car companies, want to move forward in a way that works for all of us.
Isn't there a need? What is the need of capitalism to maximize profit for the shareholders?
Good one. 1 second. I just want to put the guesses so far in the chat so we have them. And this is one of the things that I do whenever I'm in a group or even just with another person if it's complicated and we need to write it down. Just write down the considerations as you go because it's so easy to start losing track of them. So far we have this, we didn't talk about it, but I got from Sergey this reducing CO2 or caring for the environment. We have the freedom of movement and we have access to cars based on needs. And now we're trying to figure out this profit piece. So what does it give car companies if they maximize profits for their shareholders? Why are they doing it? Yes.
Stability, continuity for their company.
Mm-hmm. Why do they need stability and continuity for their company?
More for their employees than the company itself.
Mm-hmm.
Greed as well.
What's that?
Greed.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite getting it.
Greed. Greed.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
but then,
So that one, we sometimes when we're trying to understand the perspective of people or groups who are doing things that we are really, really opposed to, we start giving them some of these, like I call them caricatures, like this evil, like they're bad people. And I don't believe in bad people. I do believe that some people are doing things that we would really like for them to not do, and we want to find a way for them to stop doing them. But I don't want to use force to do that. So I don't want to turn them into a villain. What I want to do instead, and I think we were getting there, is to get to the underlying needs. So what I'm hearing is, these people want to keep their companies going, and they want to do that because it's caring for the needs of all of the employees, including them. And I think underneath all of that, a part of what they need is just to be able to care for basic human needs, food, shelter. And they don't have another way of doing that. Them making money and following the current legal structures and agreements of capitalism, it's the only strategy that they have to be able to care for those needs.
But 1 second, you're talking about the employees or the CEOs, because their basic needs are not my basic needs.
We would have both, I think, represented
if
here.
they would need to keep their private jet, since their company is closed, they cannot keep it. Then, yeah, I cannot identify with that need.
Mm-hmm. So whenever we start working our way down, if we get to something that you are against people having private jets, then we haven't found common ground yet. So we're going to get underneath that. Why do they need a private jet? Interestingly enough, I imagine it's because they want freedom of movement. So we actually have a piece of a common ground there. And when we move out of this question of whether somebody should or shouldn't have a private jet, which doesn't get us anywhere, and just ask the question, how do we care for our freedom of movement and access to transportation based on needs and people's sense of security about their shelter, food, etc. needs being cared for, we would find space for creativity. And it's a big shift. So I'm not saying this way of thinking is going to magically happen in the next 5 minutes. We're just playing with it.
Because within the freedom of movement, there is a big gap of inequality. So how do we tackle that?
How to reconcile?
That comes at once we found the common ground, that will come at the level of finding solutions. It can also be another piece of common ground to bring in. So you can say, what's important to me is I want to compensate for the current income inequality that is in society. And if that is something that's a piece of common ground and not controversial to anyone, we would also add it to the list. And if it is controversial to someone, who is at the moment really benefiting from capitalism, we will look for what is underneath that. But we would never put anything on the list unless all of us are okay with it. Which means, for example, somebody having a private jet wouldn't end up being on the list. Because at the moment, that is not okay for all of us. Yes, Alexander.
So I can understand integration in the with the people who are kind of reasoning, or they have a will, how to express myself, they have willingness to cooperate. But how do you deal when someone has the power and he will use violence because he can? So in that sense, how do you I don't know how to ask the question.
I think I understand the question. Is it okay if I check?
Yeah.
Yeah. So first, I want to say, in order for us to be able to come up with a decision that everyone is going to fully support, somehow we need everyone to participate. And it could be through representation if certain people are not willing to engage directly, but we still would need for them to be willing to follow the decision that we all make. And if some people are not willing to come into the process, then we have a problem. That we would need to solve through other means. So for that, we have things like nonviolent direct action and all sorts of other things that we can do. But the purpose of those things isn't to get other people to do what we want. This is a really important thing. I think some people look at nonviolent direct action as a way to force other people to do stuff. And I don't want to force them to do anything. What I want to do is see if I can stop some of the really damaging things that are unfolding and create willingness to come to the table and talk about it under the conditions that we will be talking about how to move forward in a way that works for everyone, not talking about you need to accept our demands. It's using the same strategy but for a very different purpose.
So, sorry,
Yeah.
I have another example,
to talk about this more, and in this moment, I really want to give people a little bit of a taste of what the practice is actually like. Is it okay for you if we see if we can come back to it after? Thank you. So I really want everybody to get a chance to try this out. The question of how we use it to influence political systems is something I would love to talk about, and not our focus for this session. We'll see if we might all hang out here after and talk about that some more. So in this session, I really want us to see what it's actually like to do it. Because even if we haven't quite figured out how to do it in order to engage with political change, even just doing it within your groups and organizations can make a really big difference in how we are all making decisions with each other when we disagree about what strategy to take to bring about political change. It is really helpful if we can do integration with all of our political allies. That already moves us towards a more collaborative and nonviolent culture. So the invitation is, in a moment, we will be opening up small breakout rooms. And the invitation is in your small group to try this out. You can use the same topic and see if you can come up with something you want to do about potentially not having private ownership of cars anymore. You can also bring up a different topic that you're passionate about. You can spend your time trying to agree about what you're going to practice on and do integration on that. That is also okay. The point is that we really want to try to focus on this idea that every time two people disagree about something, we are trying to find the common ground that's underneath. And you have the steps available for you as a reminder in the chat, or if you like the pretty visuals, you can pull up the slides and look at them there. Is there any more information you need in order to be able to practice?
So every time people disagree with something, what are the procedure? Just to clarify it a bit more, because for me it's not clear.
Sure. Let's just do because we got into some very interesting, juicy things that between the explanation and this. So let's just do another super quick demo. I'm going to demo with myself. So imagine I'm two people. And one person says, we should definitely private ownership is not even a thing. We should just get rid of cars. No more cars. Destroy all cars. And I say, what? No. in situations where there's a crisis or a medical emergency, we need cars. I want to keep cars, right? And now we're arguing. And now I want one of these people or someone else in the group, if these people get really excited and are just arguing, to step in and say, is what's important to you about keeping some cars is that you really want to care for people's health and be able to respond in crisis situations.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm actually okay with that. That's common ground. That's something we can both agree on. I also want to be able to do that. I just don't think in this moment that we need cars for that. But I'm totally okay with finding a way to take care of that consideration or that need. And we found a piece of common ground. So that is what we're trying to do. Is that clear? Yes, no, maybe yes. Okay, great. If you get stuck, Melissa and I are very happy to help you. So there's a little ask for help thing and we can come help you out, or you can just come back into this main room and we will help you out here. Melissa, maybe we'll take, I would say 12 minutes to give people a taste of this. And then we'll come back and see how it went, maybe celebrate some success stories or hear what was challenging, and see if we can sort it out. And I see some questions about participation, so I invite you to just, Melissa, some people just arrived. Maybe let's, I don't know how many people you have in the room, but maybe let's have 4 people in the room. So if there are people who missed some stuff, 3. Okay. I don't know if that's easy to shuffle, but let's try it out and just see what happens, because some people just came in, so hopefully they're not all together wondering what to do. And if you are, ask for help and we'll come help you. Welcome back from our small groups. I am curious if anyone has an insight or a challenge or a question or a celebration of something that happened in your group.
Our group actually went quite well. We did well at identifying some shared needs. Jan posted the principle of shutting down all nuclear and fission to reduce the amount of fission that's going into the atmosphere, and that we should shut down all nuclear reactors. And then we had a bit of back and forth between the 3 of us, and we managed to drill down to a shared need of addressing the environmental impact of energy production while still having a shared need that we still need to be able to produce energy to meet our demands.
I'm excited. Anything else you discovered in your group while arriving at that?
So we went back and forth over kind of like chemical pollution and definitions of, how did you put it, Jan? It was...
Oh, well, I internally have separated pollution, chemical pollution, from contamination, because I use the word contamination for radioactive contamination, and pollution is chemical, like PCBs. Well, they're not, yeah, they're both chemical and particle. But so there's chemical and particle, which I call pollution, and there's radiation, which I call contamination.
Thank you. Alberto, you want to also share something?
Yeah, so we got to that point. So the shared need was that we needed to care for the to have for the health of the environment, right? So this distinction between we were kind of debating between whether this distinction between the pollution and the contamination was useful given that shared need, and then we ran out of time.
Thank you. That happens all the time when we try to make decisions. Anyone else wants to share something from your group? Something that was interesting or challenging?
I
Yes.
wouldn't mind. I was struck, I think, by how hard it was, even among people who had all agreed to do it.
Yeah, so this is very, very countercultural, and I want to say that I really don't think it's a coincidence. If you look at most of our public schools and the way work is organized and everything that everybody is taught, it is all designed to kind of, as much as possible, not give people the skills that would allow them to self-organize into a more nonviolent and equitable society. So it makes total sense to me that this stuff would be hard because we are intentionally deprived of these skills. And so for me, it is a very deep commitment to nonviolent revolution and social systemic change to build these skills up. Because I think this is what humans would naturally be doing if we grew up in a different culture. When you think about how you are with your family, with your friends, that's usually what we do. Oh, we can't agree on something. Let's see if we can talk about it and find something, a way to move forward that everybody's going to be okay with. It's just what we want to be doing. And somehow all of that gets ripped out of us. And now we need to relearn how to actually be able to care for each other and care about each other instead of starting to be like, oh, well, that person wants something that's really bad, so I don't care if what we do is actually going to be okay for them. So it's all a process of relearning for me how to be human. Yes, Remy.
Yeah, I want to share the same, that it was just very interesting experience in like find how difficult it was to resist this urge to like react in way of like constructing arguments, or even like the solutions, right? Like that would answer the like needs, but yeah, like kind of skipping there already, and then yeah, have like having to stop this urge, and how rewarding it can be, that I can really see that then when you get all the needs on the table, you can create a solution that might be also much harder to reject, when we just see that, okay, we actually took the needs together, right? Because we listened to the needs first. And so now we start from there. So yeah, thank you very much. Very eye-opening.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's another piece, a common myth in our culture. One of the reasons we resist hearing other people's needs or acknowledging them is because we are often in spaces where the idea is that we're going to have to choose. I'm going to have to choose between my needs and someone else's needs. So then I have to show that what they want to do is wrong and what they need isn't that important, or somehow make them less of a human so that I can somehow justify that my needs are going to be met and theirs not, because I'm going to have to choose. And what we're doing here is helping us move out of this idea and back to the idea that actually we don't have to choose. We're going to need to choose between solutions, but we don't need to choose between needs because all of us have shared needs. And once we all can see all those needs together, all this energy that we're putting into defending and arguing and convincing can go into creative problem solving. It's a lot of fun to sit together and be like, wow, here are like 5 different needs in a very complex problem, or 50 different needs if you're solving very complex global problems. And what are we going to do that's going to care for all of that? Instead of putting all that energy into trying to argue with each other.
One thing I said to Sam was, this was fun.
Yes, Alberto.
Yeah, I think you already touched on what I'm about to ask, but you mentioned just now that society has removed from us the ability to kind of be human in the way that we debate and find these common grounds and build upon those common grounds. How would you describe what society has replaced that with?
I think a general value system that is about certain people deserving things and people not. and everybody needing to do certain things so that they can earn their needs being met. So then the conversation is about proving that things are right, proving that I have the credentials to be able to qualify for my needs being met. And you can see a lot of different flavors of that everywhere around you. When we ask a question of like, how are we going to distribute a certain resource? It isn't about where is it needed the most. It's about who deserves it, who has the right social location or membership. Or this is one of the things that I found. I want to say I'm a recovering capitalist. This is my own personal history. And one of the things that really blew my mind when I was working in a corporate environment is to see that people who desperately needed food and supplies could not get them. But me getting paid a really nice salary, having really not much need for any support with those things, would be constantly going into spaces like conferences where I was given everything for free. Free food, free supplies, free computer. Nothing in our society is designed to give things to people who need them. We are giving things to people who allegedly deserve them. And then, of course, they're trying to have a conversation that's based on needs. It's just not going to be a thing that comes naturally, because everybody's interested in figuring out who has done good enough to be able to get the things, and who can be blamed for things or be put at fault or be shown as less than, so that their needs don't need to matter, because we have to choose between. I'm curious if I offered you enough of that, or if there was more about that you wanted to hear.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah, it's great, and it's really, really tragic when you look around you. And often in activism, we end up actually leaning on those stories to try to get people mobilized to action. And that's really tragic for me. I totally get wanting to mobilize people to action. And when we do that by turning certain people into villains, or by saying that we must demand our human rights, we are actually moving, and this is something humanity has been doing for thousands of years. If we are successful, we would then be replacing one form of domination system with a new form of domination system. So people who are right now in control are bad, and we are good, and we're going to replace them with new good people that other people will be different from and see us as the new bad people. And we're just going to keep repeating that cycle. And I want to get out of that cycle. I just want to make a world that works for all of us, and not just all of us humans, but all of life on this planet, so that nobody is ever at the bottom of the pyramid anymore, and we don't need to keep repeating the cycle. Yes, Alexander.
Well, I just wanted to say quickly that I'm grateful to Sergey, because he had a role of like an older brother who was constantly reminded me on the rules, and as Remy and Madeline said, it's quite difficult because I can kind of catch myself how I'm going to argumentative mode, and then Sergey is reminding me, no, but what's your need and what's this? So yeah, that's the only thing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for bringing that in. I want to get another principle out of that, which is the importance of support systems. I cannot say this enough. This is an immense transformation. It's nonviolence operates at 3 layers. It's inner transformation, so we need to change our own conditioning and patterns and trauma and fears that are leading us to reproduce in our interactions all of these domination dynamics. Then we need to change in relation to other people and how we actually are in conversations and meetings and actions. And then we want to create systemic change. Okay, this is immense work. It's not easy. So we really need each other. We need support systems. We need people we can call and talk to, people who are doing it with us, agreements within our groups that we are all trying to do things in a different way. You cannot do it by yourself. If you're like, I'm going to be a hero and I'm just going to do everything. We don't have any heroes in our culture, as much as it's sometimes portrayed that way. We don't have any heroes in our culture that did not have a huge community that they were a part of, that led to them getting to be in the spotlight, leading social change. So we need each other. There's a question about sharing the slides with other people. Please do. There is a slide in there that talks about our request from Integration Station for our materials, and it's mostly about just attributing stuff to us. And if you're willing to gift money to support our work, we always appreciate that. We operate in gift principles, so nothing we share has a price, but it's also not free because we have costs and energy to offer all of this. So we invite us as a community to try to keep this work sustainable. Yes. Any other comments or questions before we move to the next piece of the puzzle? Oh, I love this. There's a comment in the chat about people valuing things more when they are not free. This is one of the tragedies of trying to transition away from capitalism. So everybody says we really want to transform capitalism. And then you say, okay, wonderful. So we will not charge for things and we will all, have financial co-responsibility for caring for them. And people are like, yay, free stuff, to pay anything. That concept of free stuff comes from capitalism. When you are at home with your friends, with your family, when you're sharing work around the house, you don't get a sense of because you don't need to pay your partner to do laundry, that somehow that laundry didn't take any effort to do. You don't think it was free laundry. You talk about how do we distribute the work. But capitalism has given us this amazing concept of free stuff, which doesn't exist. It's stuff that capitalism sponsors because it gets something in return. So it's really, really difficult to make this transition. It's a topic I'm very passionate about and not our focus for today. So if you want to talk to me some other time in one of our other spaces about gift principles and how to transition away from capitalism, I'd be very happy to do that. Remy.
Yeah, I had one more thought. Sorry, now I was like listening passionately to what you were saying, but oh yeah, from the breakout rooms, that it was also interesting to see like always the evolvement of like trying to pinpoint the need, and that like first go might like not succeed with like agreeing on that as the need, right? So we have to move further. Okay, like how can we move from there to find the need that we can actually agree on? And then it's just interesting, like how we can kind of improve it. That maybe one person says some, like for example, when we're talking, we're talking about like the sort of improvements of our society and progress and like getting better and growing. And so then we try to understand the underlying need as some sort of like innovation, but then we're also reflecting, okay, but maybe we also need to understand if like we can agree on need for innovation in general, or if we need to specify that like what type of innovation, right? Like improvement that, I don't know, improves our overall well-being and ability to like live like sustain ourselves in long term or something. And so it was just really interesting to see like these small steps of like staying with that one need and like trying to come to exactly as you said, the common ground.
Yeah, so my first and number one tip is to focus on being present and staying connected to yourself and to the other people who are there. That's the most important part. We do offer tips that help. And the challenge is that you focus too much on the tips. I sometimes use this metaphor of meditation. Like, in order to try to meditate, if you're doing the kind of meditation where you sit there and you're breathing, you need to have some idea of what you're trying to do. So you might have steps that say, sit, relax, do this, inhale, exhale. But if you sit there and you read the steps, inhale, exhale, you're not actually meditating. And this is quite similar in that having the steps and the tips is helpful. But in the moment, if you focus too much on, am I doing it right? You're actually not going to be able to do it at all. Because the thing that you need to do is to be present with each other. So I am going to share with you some tips, and I invite you to not focus on them too much while you're trying to do the thing. Just think about them before and after so that it can help you kind of build up your skill. So some tips for getting from opinions to considerations. The first one is listening. And that might seem obvious, but as some people already noticed, we tend to not. So we move into doing other things. And if you can come back to listening, and particularly listening for what matters to this person. I really love this question. This is so helpful. When somebody says, I want whatever, I want all companies to just get shut down tomorrow. What does it give you if we shut down all of these companies? That helps people get to the underlying needs, the why. And this question is more helpful than asking why, because why is very open and also sometimes felt as confrontational. So what's to give you? And then we are listening for principles. We're not listening for what people are actually saying. So somebody, like in the example I gave earlier, somebody could say, our leader should make the decision. I don't want to reflect. I don't want to say, what's important for you is for the leader to make the decision. No, that is their solution. I want to listen to what they didn't say. I want to think about what might this be about? And then use perspective taking. If I wanted the leader to make the decision, what might I want? Do I want speed? Do I want clarity? Do I want to follow our agreements of how we make decisions? What is this thing about? And then try to guess one at a time. It might be tempting to repeat back a lot of what the person said, but it actually doesn't help us connect the essence. So it's very powerful to just guess one sentence. Oh, is it that you really want to know that everybody has a shared commitment to making some radical changes? That's it, just one sentence. Oh, I get a sense that what's important to you is that all of us are able to support each other when we are taking action. Did I get it? So it's one sentence, and this says, so these are things that help. And again, don't get so concerned about are you doing it correctly that you're not actually connected. But if you're wondering what might help, these might help. And in the slides, there's also the visual representation for this, if you're more visual. This is kind of like the circle. There's somebody sharing their perspective, and then we are guessing essence. And we just repeat this until we get a full, yes, you got me. This is what's important to me. I'm going to pause for a moment so people can take this in. I get very excited and start talking really fast. And the last piece I want to cover is okay, great, we found the needs, now what? Sometimes the now what just happens by itself. So you found the needs, and then you're like, oh, well, now that we actually get what's important to everyone, we have a way forward that would work for us. So it turns out that we are all okay with making this agreement about cars or with the way we're going to make this decision. And the thing just sorts itself out. But sometimes that doesn't happen. The problem is more complex, so it's not so obvious. And in that case, we do need to do some creating of proposals. So we would think about, okay, who has an idea of how we might care for all of these needs, and do some brainstorming. And then see if that works for everyone and continue to integrate concerns using the same process. So we say, oh, we think we have a proposal. We are going to do this. And somebody says, and everybody's like, this is great. And one person is like, no, actually, that doesn't work for me because, and now they're going to add a new consideration for us. Because I really want everybody to participate. What does it give you if everyone participates? Yeah, I want to know that we are getting enough diversity of perspectives. Does anyone have an idea of a way we could change the proposal that would get us enough diversity of perspectives? And we're doing exactly the same work, just to integrate concerns. So I'm going to kind of give us a model for what this would look like in real life. The first step, you already noticed it, is to stop doing other things. So if you're taking sides, arguing, defending, giving up, whatever it is we're used to doing, to notice that you're doing that. And then to pause or help each other out and reframe the situation into a shared problem or purpose. So instead of we need to choose between doing what you want or doing what I want, we need to choose between shutting down all of the streets in our city in a protest or not doing that. Instead, we need to find a way forward that's going to work for everyone. We need to care for the environment while also caring for people's financial sustainability, whatever it is that we need to be doing. And from that place, we are going to be getting all of that common ground, all of the needs, which we just talked about, and then looking for solutions that care for all of those needs. And we keep integrating concerns until we have a decision that everyone fully supports. And the way we usually check this is to ask if there are still concerns. Does anyone still have a concern? Is there anyone who still would not be okay if we move forward with this decision? And if people raise their hand, again, we get the needs. We look to a way to integrate them until we all land at something that everybody is on board with. It doesn't mean everyone is going to like it. This is really important. Despite the picture having smiley faces, we are not actually necessarily going to all be happy. For example, if we are in a crisis situation where there isn't enough food for everyone, and we need to make a lot of tough decisions about how to distribute food, I don't think we're going to be particularly happy with any decision. But I want everybody to have a sense that this is their decision, that they are fully on board with it, that if they had the power to force a different decision, they wouldn't, because they see that out of all of the options that are available to us, this is the one that serves the most needs. So the goal isn't happiness. If we achieve happiness, that's lovely. But the goal is a decision that everybody is fully behind and fully endorsing. Questions or comments about this?
Ronnie, can I ask a question about this? Oh, sorry, I'm not the first one, I guess. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sergey, are you okay to wait?
Yes.
Thank you. Stephanie, would love to hear from you.
Yes, I was just wondering, like, I was trying to imagine, like, using that kind of approach with someone who is, say, racist, who says, no, I just want all foreigners to leave because they're scary. And how do you find common grounds if you like have completely different perspectives of reality? And
so one of the beautiful things about this approach is that we actually don't need to agree on any beliefs at all. We could have entirely different ideologies. We just need to agree on what to do. So when this person says, I don't like foreigners, we should get rid of all of them, what do you imagine is their need? What does it give them if we got rid of all the foreigners? Do you have a guess?
Well, their need is to say get a doctor's appointment, get a flat, and so on, but they might not see the connection. Or what do you mean?
Not. Yeah, they might not, and that's okay, but I can connect them to needs through their beliefs, and I don't need to agree with their beliefs. I'm gonna guess some of their needs are, yes, they want to have a job. They want to have a whatever, and if job was not a common ground, we can say they want to have their, food and shelter and whatever taken care of, right? We can find common ground there. And then once we found that common ground, we can start looking at solutions. And the reason why solutions might work for people might come from a different belief system, but it wouldn't stop us from finding a solution that works for everyone. Because the actual question would be then, the thing we would need to sort out is how do we care for this person having whatever we turned out their needs are, having those needs cared for, while whatever needs are leading to foreigners being here are also cared for. That's going to be the dialogue. And the other thing that's going to happen during this process is mutual influencing. Because even though we're not trying to convince anyone to change their beliefs, all the stakeholders are in the same room together, which means they get to hear foreigners talking about their experiences. And that often touches and moves people in ways that might surprise you. I have had some really, really touching experiences, not around this topic. I often facilitate controversy around gender dynamics. And I have had women say to me, like, why are we bothering bringing like these old men who think that they can do anything that they want? and they don't understand sexual harassment, why are we even bothering to have a conversation? And like, you would be surprised by what might become possible. And by having a space where we're not trying to convince each other, and they're just able to hear the stories of what were the needs of some of the women and what were some of their experiences, they were really, really moved. And they were totally on board with changing some of the agreements about how we do things in a space so that women would experience less of these types of situations. A lot of the times they didn't even know these things were happening because they were getting really defensive, because the way people would start the conversation with them is, you're being a sexist, oppressive man. You need to stop doing that. And they're like, no, I'm not. And then they didn't want to hear anything about what was going on. So this makes space for people to actually be able to hear what's happening for other people and to be moved by it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for bringing this in. I am mindful of time, and I know that we had 2 more hands. So I want to check if, yes, people are willing to be brief, because I do want to share just a little bit more before we close. Yes, sorry.
We can skip my question. So,
Thank you. Madeline, I think I also saw your hand.
I'm okay just to hold on and listen. I think that could be useful.
Then I will finish the speech, and then if we still have time, I'm super happy. Or if people just want to hang out here longer, I'm super happy to answer more questions. I know that some people are planning to leave when this session, usually when the session is scheduled to end. So I want to give them the opportunity to see the last bit of content. And yes, I will share that now. We will also have a recording for anyone who has some fear of missing out on something. So we left off over here. I want to say there's a little bit more in the slides around just giving you examples. So I'm not going to read all of this in this moment, but just be aware that sometimes it's hard to understand what they actually do, like where does this show up? And there are examples here when somebody says something like, we should cancel this project. If you catch yourself saying things like, but we agreed to do it, or it's too late, you can switch over to a different way of engaging in dialogue. And you notice that all of these are inviting dialogue. They are not giving up on what we need. And this is a really important distinction. Sometimes when people foresee this, I mentioned earlier, we're used to the idea that we have to choose. They're like, oh, so now I need to listen to the other person and, just let them do whatever they want, even though I think it's terribly damaging to other people or the environment. Like, no, very much hold your limits. We're just going to hold our limits non-violently. We're going to be there with curiosity to say, oh, I'm curious to know why this is important to you. I think I get you. This is what's important to me and why I'm not okay with what you are proposing. Let's see if we can find something that would work for both of us. So that was one bit. And the other bit, which is very super important to me, is, if you find this useful and want to do more of it, what might you do? Because sometimes what happens is we come in here, we get very inspired, and then we go back to our lives. And of course, all sorts of things are going on and we forget all about it. So it happens. And still, it would be nice if it didn't happen. So here are some ideas of how you might take some small steps towards a more collaborative future. So you can just start bringing this into your meetings and conversations with your partner, with your children, with your friends, in your group or organization. We talked about support systems. It really helps if you find a buddy or a practice group where you can do some real plays together, or just get your whole team or organization to get on board with this. If people are into it, that is super helpful. The other option is to join some community learning space or workshop like the one we are here right now doing. So we do more of these, we being Integration Station. So you're very welcome to come to any of our spaces or to invite us to come into your spaces and support whatever you are doing with some more integration. We do facilitation and coaching and other ways of supporting groups. And we do have some specific things coming up. So we do in-person intensives, mostly in the Netherlands and Germany, although we can travel further. And our next one is coming up in July. We still have some open spots. and we would love to have more diversity of people coming in. So this is 5 days where we are essentially doing the much deeper version of this, and also talking about how to apply it within organizations. Like, how do you make decision-making agreements or a governance system that is based on these principles? And how do you do the inner transformation work to then be able to actually follow those agreements and collaborate in these ways? So this is one option. And this is in collaboration with Resilient Uprising, which is another organization that supports activist movements and leaders with building capacity and skills. And there's information about this in the slides, but if you're super curious, what do we cover? These are all the things we covered during the intensive. Might be a bit overloading, but it's such a beautiful diagram that Melissa made that I wanted to show it. And the other thing we have is an ongoing practice community, which meets at the moment every Wednesday. Sometimes we open it on other times as well, and you are welcome to join us there. So those are some ways you could continue with this practice. And I think we have space for one more question or comment, if anyone had another question or comment before we move to closing.
What is CET time?
Oh, yes, that's Central European Time, which at the moment over here it is 8:30 in the evening, if that helps you figure out what time that would be for you. Yes, David.
Hi there. I'm afraid I missed the beginning of the session, but from what I did see, it was I really enjoyed what you had to say. I've been a student of nonviolent communication for many years, so a lot of it felt very familiar. What my sort of question about the process you were just describing was, it could take a very long time to reach that agreement, particularly if there are a large number of people, and in some contexts, getting a decision quickly is an important factor. So how do you? I mean, as an example, I was once at a nonviolent communication event, and we were trying to decide whether or not we should admit a particular person that was contentious, and we didn't reach a decision within 3 days, by which time the event was over. So sometimes, decisions need to be time bound. So how do you handle that?
Mm-hmm. In my experience, the most common reason it takes a long time is that we don't have enough skill. So the way I usually sort this out is by increasing the amount of skill in the room. So we will just bring more facilitators, and those of us, or bring somebody that just has more experience. So some of us have been doing this for 20 or 30 years, and we usually are able to move things faster. There's also sometimes a challenge where not everybody's actually oriented to making a decision. And that happens a lot in NVC spaces. Some of us understand nonviolent communication to be a framework that's designed to support self-responsibility and taking action in a way that cares for everyone's needs. And that and a part of that is empathy and everything that's included in Marshall's books. And some people understand it to be a framework that is about connection and giving and receiving empathy and being present with each other. And people who hold that understanding often are not necessarily very oriented to decision making. They are much more interested in, let's just sit here and hear each other. And then we need to make a different decision, which is we need to agree about whether we're focusing on making a decision or not. And if I see that I would say even after 30 minutes, I would be able to sense this dynamic that we are likely to, if we continue this way, it's likely going to take more than 3 days. I would say, I'm going to pause this decision. I want to move to a new decision. I want to see if we can get shared understanding about what is it that we're trying to accomplish and how long do we want to spend on it. And then once we made that decision, I think we would be in a much more helpful position to make the actual decision about the person. For me, it's a lot of the skill isn't just about being able to connect with needs and guess essence. There's also facilitation skills in knowing how to hold a group together and how to agree on a shared purpose and how to help people move without leaving anyone behind. That wasn't the focus of today's session, but it's definitely something we cover a lot during the intensive. So yes, if you or anyone else who's here or other people you know, please spread the word. That is also another way you can support us. It's not just about money. Letting people know of what we're doing and people coming to what we offer. The more people are there, the more likely it is that there will be some financial resources that will be available. So that is also a way to keep it accessible for everyone. Yes. Was that enough on that for now?
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. So I want to transition us to closing. I would love to hear from a few people, especially if you haven't shared anything yet. If you have some takeaway or appreciation or anything else that you want to share before we close for today. Yes, Chris.
Hi, yeah, thank you very much for all this. I sort of, as you're giving all these techniques and ideas, I'm kind of thinking about how it would apply close to home with my brother and my parents, and also just what's going on politically all around the place. How you talk about no villains, but I'm seeing rights being taken away all over the place, and it's hard to hold that and feel that. But anyway, yeah, very a really interesting session. So thank you very much. Not really much of a point, just yeah, thank you.
It is still nourishing to hear that it was helpful for you and that you're thinking about how to apply it in your life. So thank you. Anyone else want to share a takeaway or appreciation?
Thank you very much for the session. Really informative. That looking beyond the confrontation to the underlying needs is definitely something I'll take away with me. That's quite an eye-opener. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. I come from the American version of it, and that we say, meet someone's needs. And I really like care for someone's needs, to see that all the needs in the room will be cared for. That's really nice language. I appreciate that. And also essence is a nice word too. Translation, I hadn't used that word before. So
thank you. That one comes from conversion facilitation.
Okay. Great. Yeah, thank you. Learned a lot.
And for anyone who wants to share something and doesn't want to be on a recording, we will hang out here for a few minutes after we stop the recording, so you can connect with us. Also, if you just want to, get to know us or hear more about what we're doing. And for anyone who is leaving, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate that you're willing to explore this and put energy into thinking about how do we collaborate and care for each other more. And wishing all of you a lot of, I'm hoping, regenerative and supportive adventures in trying to bring about systemic change. I know that work can be very challenging and draining. So sending you a lot of love. And yeah, bye for now.